Yes, he's in. Hello, everyone. This is a much chilled back stream. Yes, it was meant to be Titanic today. Due to unforeseen stuff, I do apologise on that, guys. But I've come up with a very worthy replacement for the Titanic, which is mine and Count's favourite pastime. If you've seen any of our podcasts, it's shitting on communist dictators. We're under 15 minutes in, and I've already sworn so like that. But it's okay because I'm not monetised yet. Anyways, I'll let you introduce yourself and say where people can find you. There's the normal stuff.
So my name's Count Daedalus. I have a TikTok channel called Count Daedalus and an Instagram, which you can find on there, where I cover mostly political commentary, space videos, and sometimes some historical stuff, which is what this podcast will be about.
Yeah, and the space stuff is what you prefer to do, to be fair. I feel like
there's nothing I hate more than having to talk about stuff that's going on in the world, because I'm just done with it at this point. I'm done with this planet. I'm done with everything that goes on with it. I'm just done.
Which size?
I want to disappear to the countryside or somewhere close to the sea with my girlfriend and have a little farm and just have the peaceful life. Shut myself off from the rest of the world.
So Ted Kaczynski without the bombings.
Without the bombings, without the shed, without living in basically feudalism.
So this is why I see. I love the fact that because these are even less edited than the original podcast I did, because the amount of times I've got, like, I don't know if you watched one I did with Trip. We were meant to talk specifically about military ghost stories, and by the end of that podcast, we was talking about shagging alien life and human consciousness. We actually was trying to discuss like if human consciousness could survive for eternity, and it was weird, but I knew that this would be unhinged.
You've got problems.
Hey, I think that was. I mean, the shagging aliens bit. Yeah, I'll admit is a bit weird.
I mean, let's be honest. Let's be honest. If we become friends with an alien civilization, that's bound to happen at some point.
Yeah, I mean,
they get half human, half alien hybrids, and then all of a sudden, that's the new racism.
If you look at human history, this is why there's an episode of Doctor Who, right, where this guy from like the 50th century goes back to kill Rosa Parks because he's angry that black people have equal rights in like the 50th century. Bearing in mind, this is like Captain Jack's time, right? This is the whole plot, and this is an actual real Doctor Who plot. This is the same show that fights men in rubber suits, right? So he goes back and he's like, "Your kind ruined this," and I'm sitting there, I'm like, if you wanted a racism story, what you could have done, instead of going back to Rosa Parks because you just wanted the scene, the scene where she gets put off the bus with the sad American like cathedral music, and then what you should have done is gone, let's do what Russell T Davies would do and go to the future. We're on a spaceship and there's a guy being racist to a bunch of aliens. How do we know that Russell T Davies would have done it like that? Because he did it with the Ood. The Ood, the episode of the Ood where they free the Ood, is anti-capitalist, it's pro-socialist, it's anti-slavery, and it highlights the hubris of man. And why do
socialists always have to be anti-slavery? Do they not see the fucking irony?
I know, but what my point is you can make that message in that show and have it well written and go, oh yeah, no, I get that. I'm on board with the message you're trying to put across, not, huh? Like that was the entire episode. Like there's this, yeah. Anyways, the actual topic of someone who's far worse than anyone we've just discussed. I don't know actually. The way Doctor Who's been going could be considered worse than waterboarding. But Pol Pot. So let's start off with his rise to power. How did the little young boy of Pol Pot one day sit there twiddling his thumbs, go, "Mummy, I would like to kill millions of people"?
Well, supposedly he started off as the son of a landowning farmer, which is kind of amusing. Which it's always the way with these commies. They always start off somewhere. Sorry. They always start off in really horrendous conditions. I wonder if that's part of the ideology.
They always start with a spoon in their mouth. Yeah.
He was sent away to live with his elder brother when he was like 5 or 6 years old. And then supposedly he was a mediocre student. He was a mediocre student where he was educated in French, and he failed the entrance examinations to high school. Instead, studied carpentry for a year, and then went to Paris on a scholarship to study radio electronics, and became involved with the French Communist Party.
So he quite literally is the definition of sport rich kid.
I don't know. Well, I don't know about that because how rich was
Okay,
a Cambodian landowning farmer?
yeah, but consider to everyone else,
Yeah, I suppose so.
like it's the equivalent
But it's,
of
considering that he was sent away to, it's considering he went to France.
yeah, which you. To be fair, that I cannot actually I can understand how he went crazy and started murdering millions of people
It's
because he
kind of
had to spend time in
he
France.
spent had to spend time in France. I mean, can you blame him? But that's a bit like why is it with quite a few dictators we've covered now where they have these weird backstories where like Assad studied to be an optician. Fucking what's his name? Ho Chi Minh of Vietnam studied as a pastry chef in Westminster. Pol Pot studied electronics in fucking.
Idi Amin, ironically, who's possibly the most insane dictator in all of history, actually had the most normal backstory for what you'd expect for a dictator, where he was an
Well,
actual soldier.
he was a military man, wasn't he?
Yeah, it's the only one, and he's the most Fruit Loopy of them all.
Well, there you go. I mean, like I say, what's it? He Ho Chi Minh started off as a pastry chef. Assad started off as studying as an optician.
There you go. The
Pol
king.
Pot was
Sorry.
Adolf Hitler started off as a what's it called? He started off as an artist. So
Yeah.
it's like you have to think sometimes. Like, do you ever think that their mates are just sitting there like, are you sure you want to do this? Are you sure you want to go into politics? You don't want to follow your father's career and become a landowner? It's like, no, I want to seize control of a country and start murdering my opposition.
Yeah. I want to make sure everyone is equal. Really? Yes. Equally dead.
Fucked.
Equally dead.
Fucked.
The king says Vladimir Lenin and Castro were both from rich families. Funny how that is, honestly. Yeah, no. Champagne socialism is the powder keg for all communist dictators, apparently.
There you go. He became involved with the French Communist Party and joined a group of young left-wing Cambodian nationalists who later became his fellow leaders in the Khmer Rouge. That's how they start off. A lot of these commies in
They
the
also have a
20th
bit of
century.
nationalism in it. That's a
starts-
pattern.
it always starts off as nationalism, like a opposition to like colonial powers, which is understandable.
Yeah,
But
it's
then
very understandable. It's based.
they probably do nationalism to try and row up the populace to unite them, and then they sort of slip in communism at the last hurdle. So, by the way, this regime is going to be commie.
Mm.
In France, he spent more time on revolutionary activities than on his studies.
That just sounds like he went out, got laid, and had a few beers. To me,
Yeah, it does.
because when
He
like
taught at a he taught at a private school in, I can't pronounce this name, Phnom Penh, from 1956 to 1963, where he left the capital because his communist ties were suspected by the police. Hmm.
yeah.
1963, he'd adopted his revolutionary pseudonym Pol Pot. Oh, so that wasn't his actual name.
What was his actual name then?
Saloth Sar. That was his name. Saloth Sar.
He sounds like a Sith Lord.
He does, doesn't he?
Darth Saloth Sar. Vader, you have failed me. It is time to meet your replacement, Darth Saloth Sar.
Sounds like an old school Sith Lord from the Old Republic era.
Yeah, like that is proper. Like, because the Old Republic, it was one of the reasons I love the Old Republic, is because it is more fantasy than it is sci-fi.
Sounds like he was chilling with the likes of Darth Revan and Darth Nihilus.
Yeah, I was gonna say Darth Nihilus would be. That sounds more like an apprentice of Darth Nihilus. Actually, Darth Nihilus works because it wasn't he was the one that like. Yeah, Darth Nihilus was like terrifying. He had to survive by like sucking the life force, not just the force, the actual life force out of someone. Like he'd leave you like a husk.
He was essentially the Galactus of the Star Wars universe.
Not quite to that power scale, but yeah.
Well, apparently he did have to feed off of planets at one point.
Yeah, towards the end. You got to remember, Darth Nihilus died and then was like... He was basically like a cloud.
Fuck it. Fuck that for a lie. Seriously. Anyway, we're getting off topic.
He's a Sith Lord. Yeah. It's a tangent. It's got a tangent. Right, so anyway. So, after he gets back from...
By the way, Darth Salor... Darth
Salor...
Darth Saloth, we're going to refer to him as now, instead of Pol Pot, Darth Saloth. His scholarship was cut short after he failed examinations and returned to Phnom Penh in 1953 He taught at a private school from 1956 to 63, where he left the capital. Oh, I've already read this. By 1963, he adopted his revolutionary pseudonym, Pol Pot. He spent the next 12 years building up the Communist Party that had been organised in Cambodia in 1960, and he served as the party's secretary.
Interesting.
See, when I first started reading about politics, when I heard the term secretary, I'm just imagining the bitch that sits next to the CEO.
I'm also noticing that that the most evil communist dictators like Stalin and all that, they never originally lead the revolution.
No, they don't.
There's an argument with who was worse, like Che Guevara or Castro, but Castro wasn't the original head. It was Che Guevara, and Che Guevara eventually got knocked off. It's almost like Castro was working with a certain organisation to make sure he was removed, because like Castro survived all of those assassination attempts, but his number two all of a sudden got removed. It's weird that, but like all of these people in communist places never take over originally. They're never the original. Like Lenin, he's not an amazing figure, but he's not evil like Stalin was.
Well, you could make the argument that he was evil. He was still responsible for about 12 million people dead. People just forget about that.
I didn't know that, to be fair.
He was still responsible for about 12 million dead people. Old Mr. Lenin, Mr. 20th century Corbyn, as I like to call him.
Also, can we take a vote for the fact for how many like in the Soviet Union, the communists who are everyone is equal, we're all equal, we're all on the same level. We're just going to name this city Leningrad, this city Stalingrad. We're all equal. We're just naming cities after.
I think they used the name Stalingrad much later on. They definitely called it Leningrad at the beginning, but Stalingrad probably came on later on. I don't know. I haven't really looked into
Leningrad's like up north because it was near where I think it either was St. Petersburg or is.
Yeah,
because they didn't build new cities; they just started rebuilding, and that's why Stalingrad was such an important World War II battle, because it was take Stalingrad, you're taking Stalin's namesake.
Well, that's why Hitler did it in the end. He did it for ego reasons. He wanted to he wanted to bruise Stalin's ego, and it fucked him in the arse.
Wasn't hard. The irony of Stalin and Hitler being the most egotistical and easily ego-bruised people.
As you brought up Lenin, I do have a conspiracy theory about Lenin.
Constantinople moment. Yes, Stalingrad was the Soviet Union's Constantinople moment, which is why the troops got back. Sorry, go on.
I do have a conspiracy theory about Lenin.
Go on.
I don't think he actually died of a heart attack. I think he was ice picked. I think he was killed off
by Stalin.
Not necessarily by Stalin. No, I do think that because towards the later days of Lenin, he had the new economic plan, which was after a few years in power, he kind of realized that socialism doesn't really work. Like, you can't really have these inexperienced workers running factories. It's actually really difficult. We need managers, we need engineers. And he tried to stimulate a free market in the Soviet system, very similar to what National Socialist Germany did, where you had some form of free market, but the state told them what to do. And if the state if you didn't do what the state told you to do, they just nationalise you and give you to someone else. But I reckon there was probably some communist hardliners in there who thought, well, this is a betrayal of the revolution. Ice pick. Because when Stalin came in, he basically reversed it all.
You've also got to think like Stalin wasn't Lenin's number one choice. No one wanted he didn't want.
No one wanted Stalin. He was a Georgian peasant in the eyes of Lenin.
Yeah. Which
supposedly when they were deciding who was going to succeed him, obviously Trotsky was number one. But supposedly when they were deciding who's going to succeed him, when someone supposedly said, "What about Stalin?" he was kind of inclined to go, "Are you out of your mind? He's a Georgian peasant." He's not actually the most courageous of people.
No,
he's not got that much. He's not got that much charisma.
He cried when Hitler invaded, because he was like, "Oh no, my buddy Hitler wouldn't invade. We very nearly had an alliance," which everyone tries to deny, but it very, very nearly happened.
It's fucking documented, for goodness sake. They were going to carve up Poland.
They did carve up Poland. The only reason the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact didn't extend into a full alliance is because Hitler specifically didn't like communism. because
And he also
Hitler thought
he,
it was Jew. Hitler thought that communism was
he
Jewish
also
when the
didn't like
communists were busy
Russians.
doing the
He
same
also
as he
didn't like
was.
Russians because he thought he didn't. He also didn't like Russians because he saw them on the same level of as Slavs, like
Yep. Well, the Russians are Slavs.
lower than dogs or something.
Yeah. It was just unhinged. Both of those leaders were just unhinged. But anyway, back on topic. And speaking of unhinged,
Yeah.
Pol Pot possibly takes the biscuit of that. So once he's in the country and he's really getting going, what is his like first moves as taking over and renaming it to Kampucha?
Well, I'm looking at this. He said it's Britannica, so take it with a bit of a pinch of salt. They've usually been quite good. They're more reliable than Wikipedia.
Yeah, I use them as a source quite a lot, to be fair.
Supposedly, he was an
I'm
opponent.
sorry. Napoleon Bonaparte has come into the comment section to say Lenin was an elitist and a classicist, and that's so funny. Agreed. Yes.
Yeah, he was. He was an elitist.
Yeah. Right. Sorry. Back to Pol Pot.
No, the original thing I was making the point about with the communist leaders, and it even applies to Lenin as well, is that the people who start the revolution are usually intellectuals, but they're never the ones to take control because ultimately, once you've rolled up the working class have no interest in you. They see you as a use. They see you as nothing more than a means to an end.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, because you don't represent them. They'll use you to overthrow the system, and then you'll be the first people lined up against the wall because, well, this is supposed to be a revolution for the working class. You're middle class. Fuck off.
There's a very so when I covered Catherine the Great, who was one of my favorite, because like I always do the thing. People are like, why don't you like do a like Women's History Month thing? I just cover people who I'm interested in, and I find these women particularly important to history, and that's why I cover them. I don't want to put a meaning behind it. But with Catherine the Great, I did three separate parts on, and specifically. What really, like, obviously, apart from the fact, yes, she killed like 20,000 Polish people. Towards the end of her life, she went from being a pariah and someone who it's okay, guys. If you're late, it's fine. It's fine. We've been on like 7 tangents. We're just getting into Pol Pot, anyways. Where Catherine the Great was like a pariah for the serfs at the time, in the end of her life, she turned round and said that they shouldn't be educating the lower classes because an educated intellectual lower class is a danger to the upper classes.
Yes, absolutely.
And that, like, just to reinforce your point, and I think that is something that a lot of, like you say, a lot of communist intellectuals took to heart. Because if you look in communist countries, the literacy rates don't tend to go up. There are a couple exemptions to the rule constantly, but it's not like you know what I'm getting at. It's not the regular. Most communist countries like to keep people a little less educated. Cambodia specifically, well, you couldn't be educated.
So they don't. So they don't overthrow. So they don't rise up against you and overthrow you.
Yeah, because if the last thing you want is someone who you're convincing you have the best interest in at heart and you're helping, realizing that you're doing your own interests.
Yes, yeah, he was. Pol Pot was the opponent of the Norodom Sihanouk government and of the military government of General Lon Nol. And he led the Khmer Rouge guerrilla forces in the overthrow of that regime in 1975, and he was the Prime Minister of Khmer Rouge government from 1976 until he was overthrown by Vietnamese in 1979, which is hilarious in so many different ways. Like you're such a shit communist that even another communist country says, right, you need to go. It's estimated that from 1975 to 1979, under the leadership of Pol Pot, the government caused the deaths of more than 1 million people from forced labour, starvation, disease, torture, or execution while carrying out a program of radical social and agricultural reforms.
What was the percentage of people that you
I've seen that. The thing is, it says more than 1 million people. I've seen that number. For Pol Pot, I've seen that number go up to 3 million before. And to put it into context, the population of Cambodia at the time was around 8 million. So that's like a third of the entire country was just wiped out.
So if he, because before the stream, we was talking about Genghis Khan, like if Genghis Khan was actually more evil than Pol Pot was. If you could imagine, like a third of the space of the Mongol Empire, which is going from what Kiev to um, uh, Beijing. I can't remember the original
Pretty
city.
much.
Like that death toll is in the hundreds of millions.
That's about 400 million people, didn't you say?
Yeah, roughly. Well, I'm awful at maths, but roughly it's going to be like 400 million people, which is scary. I love the way that Mr. Count sits with so much smug. It makes me scared.
Say again.
So Willie said, I love the way that Mr. Count sits with so much smug. It makes me scared. He's basically calling you very Dooku-like, I think.
I sit with smug. I'm just sat. I don't even think.
I don't know. I think it was a compliment.
I know it's a compliment, but I'm just sat here just thinking, like, what am I doing? I'm just sat here.
Pumpkin Bear says, thoughts on... Oh, hello, my mod, Pumpkin Bear. Thoughts on Queen Mary of Scotland. I could go into... if we have time, I'll go back to her at the end of the stream. Otherwise, we'll never talk about Pol Pot, because she's one of my favourite monarchs. Count, do you have a question? Yeah, no, I was going on there, I will admit. Pol Pot, communism too hard. Be careful.
Yeah, he did. In a way, he did do communism too hard in a way, but I still think that if you're doing it purely by percentages, then he did communism too hard. But
oh, we're losing connection.
You know, he's still not to the level of Mao or Stalin.
Yeah.
Following the Vietnamese invasion of his country, Pol Pot withdrew to bases in Thailand to lead the Khmer Rouge forces against the new Hanoi-supported government in Phnom Penh, which refused to consider peace negotiations as long as he remained at the head of the party. Yeah.
I thought Thailand was fascist. I know they were fascist in World War II because they joined the Axis, didn't they? I didn't know they went communist.
I don't know anything about Thailand, I must admit. Other than the fact that their curries blow my bloody mouth off.
I do love Thai food. I love Thai. You can actually get Thai seafood. We need to stop doing these tangents. It's 7 o'clock already. The only thing I know about Thailand is that if I eat Thai food, no disrespect to Thailanders, but if I eat Thai food, it's guaranteed I'm going to have a very painful arsehole. I really wish that I'd filmed when I came down, if I'd filmed the restaurant and we'd seen me eating Thai food, because you and Countess were finding it so funny. I'm like, I can handle Thai. I eat Thai all the time. I can handle. You were going visibly red. I was like Scooby-Doo, the Scooby-Doo movie. To be fair, it was funny to me because the time before that, I had the exact same food, and I was not expecting the heat at all. Like, I knew Thai food was spicy. I've had worse experiences, but I wasn't expecting it to be spicy at all. It was like this. It was like these oysters, and I was thinking it was just oysters. And then I put this thing against my mouth, and then my lips and my entire mouth is just on fire. It's like, is there a fire extinguisher anywhere near here? Because I feel like I'm gonna spontaneously combust. That's Thai food in a nut. Well, I didn't realise, because when I had it in Germany, I know I went to Germany and tried Thai food. That was that wasn't spicy. It was a seafood platter, but I suppose that's the difference. Be careful. And then I gave that oyster to Countess, and she just wolfed it down like it was nothing. Countess is immune to spice. That scared me. Be careful. Be careful. People from Mongolia love Genghis Khan. Now they do. You have the European Britain sitting there going, "We're so sorry for our colonial past." Poland's like, "We will restore the Commonwealth." Italy's like, "Yeah, we were Roman Empire. We genocided a few Celts. What are you going to do about it?" Greece is like, "We want to restore the Byzantine Empire." Meanwhile, the Mongols are like Genghis Khan 2.0. Yeah. The Mongols are just sitting there. Everyone else is crying like, "We're so sorry." The Japanese pretend that they have anime now, and then the Mongolians like, "Would you like to see our massive statue of our genocidal leader?" You don't really hear much from the Mongols, though, do you? You don't really hear anything coming out of Mongolia. It's kind of just forgotten about. Yeah, it's mad. I was looking at comes to space a little bit, but I was looking at night maps of Asia, and I noticed the east coast of China was just completely lit up, and where Mongolia is, it's like looking at
It's like looking at a forest at night, an aerial view, and there's just a few people camping. Like you can see a few campfires. That's what it looks like because there's just hardly anything there. I'm just like, what happened to the Mongols? Then the Mongols must be shitting themselves in a way because they're next to China, and China's kind of a major power these days. They
Both
probably
China,
sat like,
both China and Russia have annexed Mongolia at different points.
yeah, Mongolia used to be communist at one point.
Yeah, the communist leader of Mongolia slapped Stalin.
Yeah, he did.
Let's carry on with Pol Pot, and then we'll take some more questions in a second.
Yeah, so he remained. They refused to consider peace negotiations as long as he remained the head of the party. Although ostensibly removed from the military and political leadership of the Khmer Rouge in '85, he remained a guiding force in the organisation, which continued its guerrilla campaign into the '90s, though diminishing intensity. By 1997, the Khmer Rouge were in deep decline, their ranks riddled by desertions and factionalism. By June of that year, Pol Pot was forcibly ousted from the organisation's leadership and placed under house arrest by his colleagues. And in July, he was convicted of treason. And when he died in 1998, the cause of death was attributed to heart failure, but claims circulated that he died by suicide. Although autopsy was never performed, however, and the cause of death was never medically verified. Probably was suicide, to be fair.
So
they didn't really go into details about just how bloody ruthless his murders were, which is a bit.
I know that there was a sports bar all the journalists went to that was like a safe haven because it had like insane private security.
Yes.
But like if you look up, it's worse than the Burmese genocide. There's pictures from Cambodia of piles of skulls.
Yeah, there's a pile of skulls here. That's just the killing fields. That's where most of it happened. Like that's one place that if anyone ever plans to go to Cambodia at some point, they should definitely go to visit the killing, because it is just.
Do you want to go into a bit more detail of the killing fields? Because I only know rough amounts about the killing fields.
Well, I know some of the more despicable things that the Khmer Rouge did to their opponents. They targeted anyone they perceived to be intelligent. So he effectively declared war on education itself, where if you so much as had glasses, if you wore glasses or spoke a foreign language, so you'd just be killed. And then one of the more disgusting things that they did, which they probably took from Mao, to be honest, because Mao was famous for doing this, although it is being suppressed these days. But they were known for taking the children or the babies of the people they'd murdered, and they would just batter their heads against trees to either stop their growth or kill them entirely, so that they don't then grow up and seek revenge against the Khmer Rouge.
This was to reinforce of Mao that actually carried on. I believe it still goes on, and it's specifically done in China now with young baby girls, because that's one of the reasons why China has such a high male population, because they want the sons, because this the way China's very patriarchal. It happens a lot in communist societies. It's a very patriarchal system, so they need the sons for their families to survive. So if they have a baby girl, obviously one-child policy. It's one of the reasons the CCP actually had to get rid of the one-child policy, because they was like, wow, we need people to have more than one kid because they're killing all of the baby girls. In fact, there's multiple cases of villages. There's multiple cases of villages forcing abortions on women. Not a question of should they have the right to, a question of, oh, that's a baby girl. Cool. Literally the meme at the end of The Dictator where he goes, so are you having a baby boy or an abortion? Like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, sorry, you can carry on now.
I'm sure in some world that's progressive.
Yeah, giant.
It would be progressive if it was the other way round. If male babies would be.
What's funny? Not to get too conspiracy theory, guys, but YouTube physically wouldn't let me. That's the reason this didn't have a schedule on it, and it was just went up as a stream. Is because, and Count can attest this. YouTube would not let me schedule the stream. I was trying this for about 20 minutes with the two Communist Party of Cambodia and the CCP, and so I don't know. Why? Okay, from Break from the Killing Fields, we've got some more comments come in. I'm an American, so I know nothing about European royalty and leadership except the Austrian painter and King Henry VIII. Thailand has a monarchy. I know it has a monarchy now. I would love to know if the monarchy was hiding Pol Pot, or if he just sort of like hid there and they didn't really have a choice.
Let me look it up.
Okay. If it's possible to communism too much, can you do other ideologies too hard? Yes. We're currently living.
You could do any. You could do any ideology too hard.
Yeah, because I used to be a big proponent of direct democracy, and I think direct democracy is democracying too hard because as much as I am very libertarian, I like everyone to have their say and their right. There are some people who are not bright enough. I would consider. I'm not going to lie, and also I'm throwing my own hat in that ring because I wouldn't have an idea how to lead a country. There's pictures of me from nights out with street cones on my head. Should I have a vote on if we go to war with Russia or something? I love how History Daddy says we will restore the Commonwealth with so much dedication. I'm not saying that I want us to restore the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. I'm not saying that. But hypothetically, I'm joking. The British Museum, hear you something, nothing, it's okay, I guess I'll keep this stuff. I do have an interesting take on the British Museum that's going to upset everyone a lot when I actually come out with it. But that's for an entirely different live stream. I'll probably do that with History Revealed because he wants to come back and do some debunks about the British Empire.
Yeah, they were supported. Pol Pot was actually supported by United States, Thailand, South Vietnam.
Was he supported by Thatcher as well? I remember you saying that last time I spoke about him.
I think he was. I think he was also supported by the UK for some fucked up reason. I don't know why, but for some reason we supported him as well.
Thatcher, milk snatcher.
I don't know if it was some kind of dodgy deal or something. Maybe it was because Vietnam was opposed to them.
Yeah,
because he was supported by South Vietnam. It says. So there you go. So presumably by Pol Pot's end, Vietnam had fallen already, and well, Ho Chi Minh's communists weren't exactly a fan of Pol Pot.
How did Ho Chi Minh get involved in invading? How did the Communist Party of Vietnam actually take the decision? Okay, right, this communism is bad compared to ours.
Hang on, I do remember it, but I can't. I want to be.
It's all right. I'll take some more questions while you're having a look. Right. The French love me, Napoleon, for good reason. Fun fact: Napoleon is Corsican, which is essentially Italian. If you look at historically,
get out.
He is technically. Hey, look, it's fun to say that because the French all hate it when I bring it up.
As an Italian, I do not claim Napoleon.
Napoleon's in the chat.
I do not claim.
He's in the chat. Napoleon's in the chat.
I do not claim Napoleon the Short.
Actually, that was British propaganda. We made that up.
I don't care.
Sure, he did abandon his men.
I don't give a shit. In my worldview, he was a midget. Stupid little Frenchman with big dreams.
I love how before the stream,
just like Hitler.
Like
Hitler. Stupid little European man with big dreams.
Oh, this is all getting. It's just going to be clipped of you ranting about Napoleon and me laughing because I called him. Because this entire thing started because
I'd love to see that. I'd love to see the justification for that. I'm going to try and cancel Count Daedalus because he called Napoleon a midget. It's like, go on then. What's bad about me ripping into Napoleon? Come on then. The case.
Okay, right. So
make the case for me saying that Napoleon and Hitler were small people with big dreams.
I don't know if I would compare Napoleon directly to Hitler, personally.
Too late.
Oh no. So anyway, Ho Chi Minh, how did he decide to invade Cambodia?
By the end of 1978, Vietnamese leaders decided to remove the Khmer Rouge-dominated government of democratic Kampucha, perceiving it as being pro-Chinese and hostile towards Vietnam. There you go.
I like that because not many people know that everyone goes, what was the China's Vietnam? What was the CCP's Vietnam? Do you know what China's Vietnam was? Vietnam.
I was about to say, they didn't have one, did they?
China's Vietnam was the Chinese nationalists will say that that they beat Vietnam in that war. All they did was take the north, and I think they might have taken the capital, but then they were absolutely eviscerated by the Vietnamese.
I thought the Vietnamese I thought the Vietnamese commies and Chinese commies liked each
They
other.
hate each other. I don't know how they are now, but at the time they hated each other. There were two. You have to remember,
I,
every communism is one of those
I,
things that everyone has their own version.
I know. It's just I could have sworn that Mao supported Vietnam.
I don't know. I know that
I
he
don't
supported Korea because he sent troops into Korea. It's one of the
know.
reasons of Korea, because the communists in Korea were very nearly destroyed. It was because China got involved.
Yeah, China just saw that the UN task force to fight the North was pushing closer and closer to the Chinese border, and they thought, well, what's to stop them if they keep going? So the Chinese sent
I'm
thousands of soldiers to
I'm
their
gonna
border.
be real. Knowing the Americans, and no offense to the Americans in the comments, because I can see
At
Petra
the time,
Petra.
they probably would have done.
They probably would have pushed into China if they'd seen, oh, China's wide open. Yeah, we're going to push into China. There
Actually,
is.
no, I don't think they would. I
Oh, you
don't think they would
disagree?
have pushed into. I think they would have taken North Korea and just reunified it entirely. I don't think they would have started pushing into China. China's too fucking big to take.
There was that. You got to remember. I think MacArthur's still about at this time. He was
Yeah,
very much a jingoist. So actually, no, they rejected him using because my favourite thing about the MacArthur was him turning around and being like, "Okay, so my plan to take North Korea is we're going to get a load of nukes," and everyone was like, "Stop you right there. Is this going where I think it's
yeah,
going?" MacArthur's going, "No, it's not going where you think it's going. So what we're going to do is we're going to go along the mountains. We're going to launch a load of nukes, and we're going to set off a load of avalanches." And then everyone's like, "Going to stop me right there." And I was like, "Don't." And he's like, "No. Let me finish. Let me finish. We're going to then launch another line of nukes, and it basically like where the 45th parallel is, or whatever it's called now. Was just going to
yeah.
be. He was just going to detonate lines of nukes along the front line and then advance. And for no point did he think to himself, "Hang on, we have to advance through the irradiation."
It's a bloody idiot. Absolute
MacArthur.
idiot.
He was good in World War Two, but he fell out of usefulness. Okay, right, more comments. Absolute monarchy is the best form of government. If I was 15, I would have agreed with you, but not now. Libertarian monarchism is a lot better. If you do want a monarchy. I don't think the British Museum was bad. Like they have some of the last relatives from ancient tribes because they're actually preserved. So I'll do a very quick rundown of my thoughts. British Museum. Yes, no, some of those artifacts are stolen, should be returned. But stuff like the Koh-i-Noor diamond, which belongs to the royal family, isn't Indian. It's not Persian. It actually goes back to Afghanistan, I believe. A lot of those artifacts were from tribes who at the time didn't actually necessarily care about those artifacts because they had followed to Islam or Christianity. Either that or they were going to be destroyed, i.e., with ISIS in our like present day destroying hundreds of Babylonian artifacts that are like nearly 5 or 6 thousand years old, the cradle of civilization, right? If those artifacts had been taken to a museum in the British Museum or one of the ones in Berlin, they would be safe. So yes, there is an argument for the museums. Do I believe that these nations should get their artifacts back if they can prove they can look after the artifacts, which I know sounds a little bad, but like
I
British Museum isn't good, but it's also preserving the artifacts. It's got its own self-interest at heart. So what were you going to say?
stop watching Black Panther.
That yeah, I would see that you just said what I said in a much harsher way of saying it. Like there's a lady on TikTok.
Otherwise, you're going to end up with this constant back and forth between different places because they'll say, "Okay, we're giving these artifacts back to these countries." Then some other tin pot lunatic somewhere is going to pop out and say, "Hang on, actually, 4,000 years ago, this belonged to us, and you took it from us." And
There's
it's just
a
going to be a fucking back and forth.
there's a lady on TikTok called May. I do keep
And
meaning
they don't
to
give a shit about the artifacts; they just want to sell them.
yeah. Like places like Egypt can definitely. But I'm so there's a lady on TikTok called May. I don't know if you can see that internet.
Yeah.
Oh no, that's my personal chat coming up. We don't want to
Roll
show
it.
you that. But there's a lady on TikTok called May. She does a brilliant breakdown from the perspective of the people whose artifacts have been taken, and she does an actual neutral. Which is the first. Most of the time, the British Museum's just like had a go at, which again is understandable. It's one of those things where I understand both points of view, which, as Count knows very well, when you sit in the middle, both sides do nothing but hate you. Okay, have we got any more Pol
I hate
Pot?
both sides.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No. The British Museum
Yeah,
absolutely does.
that's by the way, just for the chat, that text message that he got, it said send Bob's and Virginie.
Yeah, yeah. That's because I no, actually no. If we go down the route of finishing that joke, it's gonna get us both cancelled. Um, Ho Chi Minh originally wanted support from the USA, but they said no. Yes, that's true, isn't it?
Yes, I wanted to come back to the USA because that's another thing that if you visit Cambodia, it will make you want to it will make you want to rip Henry Kissinger's face off.
Go on.
Because Henry Kissinger participated in the original bombing of Cambodia, which reduced it to rubble. Yeah,
Why did they bomb Cambodia?
part of the support of the Khmer Rouge.
Right. So wait. So the USA, whose entire policy at this point was eradicate communism, was bombing civilians in support of communism.
Yeah, Operation Menu, it was called. It was a covert United States Strategic Air Command bombing campaign conducted in eastern Cambodia from March 1969 to May 1970 as part of the Vietnam War and the Cambodian Civil War.
I know that there was US Marines who did go into Cambodia, but I thought they fought against the Khmer Rouge.
They might have done in the original they might have done against the Khmer Rouge originally, but either way, they bombed the shit out of the place.
Well,
yeah, here we go. Cambodia endured long years of turmoil and outright horror. A French colony from the late 1800s to 1950s, occupied during World War II by Japan, then bombed by American forces during the Vietnam War. It experienced its bloodiest years during the reign of Pol Pot's Khmer Rouge between 1975 to 78, the worst period in its history. Civil war had existed in Cambodia since 1970, when Sihanouk was ousted by Lon Nol. Between 70 and 73, during the Vietnam War, the United States bombed much of the countryside of Cambodia, like North Vietnam, and manipulated Cambodian politics to support the rise of the pro-West Lon Nol as the leader of Cambodia. The Khmer Rouge used the United States bombing to recruit followers and as an excuse for the brutal policies they exercised when in power. Lon Nol's government fell after the US left. By April 75, the Khmer Rouge, led by Pol Pot, seized control of Cambodia, renaming the country as Democratic Kampucha.
What is the obsession with communist leaders having democratic in the name of their communist country?
Fuck knows, honestly. I think it's part of the ideology. The Khmer Rouge established a reign of terror, and their mass atrocities and mass brutalities were unparalleled. They persecuted the educated, such as doctors, lawyers, current or former military and police. Christian, Buddhist, and Muslim citizens were also specifically targeted. Pol Pot aimed at exterminating anything that was urban or modern in an attempt to establish utopian agrarian communist society. He forced the people to leave villages and cities, abandon their homes, and move into the countryside. Khmer Rouge's policies were guarded by its belief that citizens of Cambodia had been tainted by exposure to outside ideas, especially by the capitalist West. In 77, Pol Pot intensified the process to finish off all dissident communists and other moderates. The purges spread to the mass of the peasantry, as well as the persecuted urban evacuees. They closed schools, destroyed libraries, temples, and banished religion. Personal property was banished. The Khmer Rouge adopted a policy of forced unpaid agricultural labour for all. Nice equality right there. And brutal persecution of Buddhist monks and ethnic minorities, Chinese, Vietnam, Cham Muslim, and Thai, in an effort to create a society without competition, in which people worked for the common good. The Khmer Rouge placed people in collective living arrangements or communes that enacted re-education programs to encourage the commune lifestyle. People were divided into categories that reflected the trust that the Khmer Rouge had on them. The most trustworthy were called old citizens. The pro-Western city dwellers began as new citizens and could move up to deportees, and then candidates, and then finally full-right citizens. However, most citizens never moved up. Those who refused re-education were killed in the fields surrounding the commune and the notorious prison camp Tul Song Center, known as S21. The regime's ideology and tactics were so extreme that it targeted almost all aspects and segments of Cambodian society for destruction, and was ultimately responsible for the deaths of an estimated 2 million of the country's 7 million people. It was isolated from the outside world, with the exception of Chinese and North Korean advisors, who numbered around 10,000.
I don't know where to take it from there.
The Khmer Rouge under Pol. It carries on.
Wait, keep going.
The Khmer Rouge under Pol Pot also aimed at extending the area by incorporating large chunk of Vietnam. Starting in 79, the Khmer Rouge conducted cross-border raids into Vietnam, killing thousands of Vietnamese citizens. The Khmer Rouge leaders spoke openly of wanting to annex Vietnam. Domestically, massive purges sparked an uprising in the eastern zone of Cambodia in opposition to Pol Pot's regime. Rebels comprising defeated soldiers and others against Pol Pot regrouped across the Vietnamese border and called for help in Hanoi in 1978. Initially, Vietnamese response was restrained as the Khmer Rouge had the support of China and Vietnam wanted to avoid a two-front war. In 78, Vietnamese forces advanced and tried to negotiate with Pol Pot, but the latter declined. By the end of 78, Vietnam was convinced that to protect the people of Cambodia and its borders, it was necessary to eliminate the Khmer Rouge. In addition, the large-scale exodus of refugees was causing heavy expenditure, and the local rebel group desired support from Hanoi. Pol Pot aimed at acquiring the entire Mekong Delta. The border attacks increased frequency and brutality. Nearly 500,000 people were made homeless and uprooted, and over 100,000 hectares of farmland had to be abandoned because of the fighting. Vietnam forces also joined by the United Front of the National Salvation of Kampucha, a smaller contingent of Khmer troops made up mostly of disaffected Khmer Rouge who had survived by fleeing into Vietnam or Laos, survivors of Pol Pot purges, and some of the Khmer Rouge revolutionaries who had fled to Vietnam in the 50s during the struggle of independence from France. In 79, the combined Vietnamese and UNFSK forces took Phnom Penh and offered the Kampucheans the hope to end the nightmare. Nearly all Cambodians, despite their different political persuasions, welcomed the Vietnamese as liberators from the atrocities and horrors of the Pol Pot years. The People's Republic of Kampucha was proclaimed on January 10, 1979, with Heng Samrin as president. However, the problem of survival and reconstruction faced the new government. The Vietnamese helped to restore transport systems and administrative infrastructure, which enabled international aid to go through. Private property was restored, schools reopened, and some Buddhist practices were reintroduced. Cities were repopulated, and with freedom of movement, internal trade flourished. Vietnam also provided 180,000 tons of food and seed rice by June of 1980, despite their own problems. As the news of Khmer Rouge atrocities spread, donations started coming from the Western Bloc countries too, but the main assistance came from the Soviet bloc.
Interesting.
It's amazing that Vietnam helped Cambodia get back on its feet. That's a W for Vietnam.
I think, yeah, Vietnam is that. Vietnam is it's one of those nations you don't expect it to be as powerful as it became. Like Vietnam now is actually very powerful for its position in China, and no one really talks about it, which I think is what Vietnam likes best. But there's something weird in that I noticed that you said earlier. How come most of these communist revolutionaries almost like we see it now, obviously with a lot like in America with the modern left, like if you're not left wing enough, you're excluded, sort of thing. Obviously, they're not shooting people. But with communist takeovers, you often see, oh, you're not communist enough, bang. Like, why do you think that is?
It's all ideology. It's a purity test. It's kind of like a religion. It's kind of like a religion. As much as communists want to say they're anti-religion, they're more religious than they think. It's a purity test. It's like, okay, you say you're a communist, but how committed to the ideology are you?
So why do you think religion has to go as well?
Are you actually on board with the ideas of the party, or are you just trying to stay alive? Are you just trying to go with the way the wind is blowing?
So why do you think communist nations, as we finish off, it's 7:30 now, and I've got a hard stop at about 8:00. Why do you think they always attack? Because obviously my stance, even as an agnostic, I think we need to bring more religion back into society. I think that's one of the reasons we're sort of wavering, because without religion, people will find a new religion.
I'm not.
I understand. Yeah, no, we've had this debate, but I'm just using it as a jumping ground for what my question is why do communists, especially whenever they take over a country in a revolution, why do they find it so important to erase religion and its symbols?
Well, it's part of it. It's part of the ideology to sort of reset society, like a year zero kind of thing. Like the old has to be destroyed. We need to get rid of the old. Everything that represents the old order needs to be destroyed. And religion is a physical representation of tradition. That needs to be gone. In a communist society, that needs the we saw most of this in the Cultural Revolution in China. It was about having a year zero and essentially destroying any physical representation of the old order. Statues have to be removed. Libraries need to be torched. Any physical representation of the old order must be torn down because we're starting fresh. This is new. This is different. That is old. That must be destroyed.
Makes a lot of sense. It's very similar to, I think, how China now is. So if you do a 23andMe, you'll like your DNA will come up as like Han Chinese. But if you break it down, there's actual specific people who will break down what Chinese ethnicity you are specifically, because the CCP has worked tirelessly to remove different ethnicities apart from like Han Chinese, because I believe they're the ruling class.
Doesn't sound very fascist at all, does it?
No, it's homogenizing, which is why
Definitely not eugenics.
yeah, it's communism and fascism are completely different. I don't know what you mean, Count. There absolutely is no way they're almost the exact same. They're just
They only disagree. They only disagree on little things, but mostly you end up with exactly the same system. One person or an elite group of people dictating to the rest of society.
My favourite.
Based on ideological nonsense.
I will
I
say. Sorry, go on.
I like to refer to them personally as either the herpes of society or the flat earthers of the political spectrum.
Yeah, I mean there is a.
I prefer the flat earthers of the political spectrum, to be honest, because fascism has mostly been crushed. You do get a few basement dwellers here and there who do occasionally fantasize about fascism, but they're not a threat. Whereas you will see people with hammers and sickles on the street.
This is my thing. Sorry, go on.
It's you're always going to get every 50 years or so a bunch of ideological idiots who just say, "One more time, guys, one more time. It's worth a shot." And it's like you just don't bloody learn.
See, this is... Sorry, go on. I'll let you finish your thought process.
The theory, like from the way I've always, when it comes to actually talking about communists, from my own personal experiences, having been one once upon a time, there's a difference between theory and in practice. And a lot of the commies like to defend their perfect view of communism and disassociate themselves from the likes of Stalin, whereas before Stalin died, the socialists loved him. They absolutely loved him. But once he died and the atrocities came out, they distanced themselves from him. That wasn't real communism. Real communism cannot truly ever be attained unless you completely crush every single ounce of individuality. There is a fundamental difference between the theory, which is a classless, stateless, moneyless society, effectively ran by the working class, who become the proletariat, dictatorship of the proletariat, effectively. And what you end up with, because the whole idea is that the state will wither away once you've got rid of the old establishment. No state or group of leadership in history has or ever will wither away and just surrender power. It never happens, and it never will happen, because all who gain power are afraid to lose it. Power corrupts, and
it's the same thing with a few people know who followed me early on TikTok. Obviously, being very pro freedom, I'm a free speech absolutist. Which is what I was going to say earlier, is like I would much rather, because you've got a few basement dwellers, I would much rather the fascists and the Nazis were out in public saying their stuff with free speech protecting them, because then I know who to try and debate and talk down and bring them away from that view, or to avoid. Yeah, or three, then we know, oh, okay, right, you're if you allow people to speak openly about Nazism and fascism, and they go and run for election, and they're sitting there going, oh, yes, well, I'm going to be very careful because I know if I say it will get clipped. A certain man from World War II made some certain points. You can't clip that to make me look bad. I'm smart now, internet. I'm smart now, internet. Right, and they sitting there and they're saying this horrific stuff, and then you're sitting there going, huh, yeah, I'm not going to vote for him. Whereas if they're clever and they word it differently, just like, well, you know, we'll make some changes round here. Butlins is a nice little camp going. Like they're sitting there, right, and they're winking away, right.
Don't violate Butlins like that. Don't violate.
They
Butlins
gave me
like
food
that.
poisoning once. I can violate them, right now, right. When they're doing it in the shadows, that's when you get a revolution, and out of nowhere, like the Reichstag's burning down. Like that's...
you end up with a situation where you also get a scenario. We get it in the West a lot, where it's like first they came for this person, then they came from that person. Instead of actually letting these people spout their bullshit in public and let the public ridicule them like they did with the BNP when they got their 1 hour of fame on Question Time, for those who don't know, they evaporated.
This is the thing. When you put fascists and communists up in front of a group of people where they have to answer actual questions of the working class, they fold.
They completely fall every single time, and you never interrupt your enemy when they're making a mistake.
Yep.
And it's giving them the full glare of the spotlight is the best way to deal with it, because otherwise you end up with a situation with
Oh, the CCP are trying to cut the feed. I've got good stream. That's not my end. I've got good stream stuff. And you cut out. Count? Just the CCP cut you out.
Everyone you don't.
There you go. Are you back? Oh, guys, I think they've.
Dogs fashion. Hello.
Are you back? You back, mate? The CCP cut you out. The CCP tried to take you out there.
I was just making the argument that if you start saying that if you get to what we have now, where people an overly zealous group of people, an overly zealous ideological committed group say are fascists and Nazis when they're not fascists and Nazis, you end up derailing what it means to be a Nazi and a fascist.
Perfect. That is the perfect summary of it.
And that is incredibly dangerous.
Yep. Yeah, after that's the most political this channel will ever get, is us explaining freedom. Which, to be fair, the only reason I bring up freedom of speech is because it's so poignant to Pol Pot, Mao, Stalin, Hitler, all those groups. They all have one thing in common. It's the first thing they attacked.
The first thing the fascists and the communists have one big thing in common. They are not pro freedom of expression. They never are. Because
the second, as much
their ideology flourishes on compliance, not criticism.
Yeah, and if you do manage to reject their ideology and you do manage to go against it, you get the killing fields. Okay, questiony time. Let's see where we are. Napoleon, I don't know if I can read that out. Okay, right. I did not say this, YouTube. Ho Chi Minh looks like Mr. Miyagi. Is that racist to say?
He does. He absolutely does.
This is where Count gets cancelled for agreeing with that.
Honestly, if I ever do a dictators episode on Ho Chi Minh, I will be saying, how harmless could this guy be? He just looks like a little an older Mr. Miyagi. And when you consider that he before his revolutionary days he trained as a pastry chef in Westminster, you think, well, how much sugar was in his pastries to formulate a communist revolution?
Imagine he's just sitting there one day. He's like, "Oh, there's no sugar," and he just sits there. And he's like, "I will renounce my pastry chef ways, and I will make sure that everyone gets an equal amount of sugar." Pumpkin Bear says, "Ew, government," which is a very based thing to say. Swilly says, "Is it just me, or is the stream really quiet?" It shouldn't be. I've put it up at full volume. I have full volume. Let me know, guys, if anyone else is experiencing that. At least they need to reunite the muses. I don't know what we were talking about that made you say that. I know Wendigoon made a video about the CIA pretending to be vampires. Yes, that was in the Philippines, I believe, because they have which is actually they also did that in Japan. Or the US, I believe it was the GIs that did it in Japan, or when they was like moving through Japan occupied territories, because the vampire belief was very strong in these countries, and so they having those audios played. But the Vietnamese played obviously audios to the American GIs and Marines who were fighting in Vietnam. So like the mythological warfare is actually very recent, and it still goes on. It's very long. It's always been used, but you get what I mean. We still use it today. This feels like a horrible history skit. Why are we bombing civilians in support of communists? That would be a hilarious. Oh look, there's count on his phone.
What was that? Sorry.
This feels like a horrible history skit. Why are we bombing civilians in support of communists? Yeah. I might steal that idea for TikTok. I'll credit you, so will
The Cold War was a very questionable period of time. It was just that's why I find it so fascinating, the Cold War scenario, because it was just an ideological battleground.
The Cold War being capitalism versus communism was the greatest lie we were ever told. It's just America versus Russia, and a little bit China.
Yeah,
this is the exact. It was literally America versus Russia. That's the entire Cold War. Sorry to be nosy, but why do you have a file called Dating Simulator on your PC? I don't know how you see that, because my screen is covered with me and Count, so I don't know where you've got the idea of me having a dating simulator from. I don't know. Count's looking at me like joking, like, do you have a dating simulator? And he's thinking of which one, because there's a joke that me and Count could probably bring up, although I'm not going to bring it up because it's very much an inside joke.
Is it an inside joke?
Well, it's inside the Discord. Which, if you want to join Inside Jokes, you should. You have to inbox Count and be like, "Can I join the Discord?"
You have to inbox me on Instagram. Unfortunately, you might be able to inbox me on TikTok. Some people have managed to, but you have to be at least 16 or over to join it.
And wait, what? Do you want to quickly go over the rules for joining the Discord? Because I know there are some people that watch you.
Entry requirements: so you have to be 16 or older. You have to be able to handle all forms of humour, including dark and dry. And you must be able to agree to disagree. We don't do any of this wishy-washy nonsense about, oh, I'm right, you need to submit. We don't do that shit.
Yeah, and to put it this way, when I first joined, I was
basically being adult.
Yeah, I was. Count has had to call me out a couple of times when I've got a bit passionate in debates, and Count's will be like, you're kind of being a bit of a dick.
How does Count Dooku fold his fucking cape? My one keeps on folding.
Because you're sitting down. It's because you're sitting down.
Probably is. One.
In all those scenes, he's standing up, so gravity does the work.
Count Dooku moment.
The Mongolians tried to invade Vietnam and they lost. Yes, the Mongolians also got beat. They got stack wiped twice. Really? Yeah, the Mongolians got beaten in Vietnam and they got beaten by Japan twice. Ironically, Japan. You know how we got defended from the Spanish by storms like 5 or 6 times. Yep. The same thing happened with Japan. Japan, like each time the Mongols tried to invade Japan, there was horrific storms and a load of the ships got destroyed, so the Mongols didn't have a proper force. And the samurai were just really good at actually defending Mongol horsemen. So, ideological politics has become the new religion. Yes.
Yes, it has. It absolutely has.
I found an ancient recipe for marshmallows from ancient Rome that I want to make. Go ahead. Put it on your... I know you do some streaming occasionally. Do it for a streamer. Devotion to dear leader, not God. Yes, very true. That is the communist way forward. China has a caste system. Sorry, go on.
What was that? Do it on a stream.
I said to Pumpkin Bear to make marshmallows on a stream.
Fair enough.
China has a devotion to dear leader, not God. Yes, that's very true. China has a caste system, basically. Would you agree with that? You know a bit more about the current state of China's politics than I do.
What do you mean, sorry?
Napoleon Bonaparte says China has a caste system, basically.
A class system?
A caste system, like Hindu caste system.
I wouldn't know, personally. I'm not 100% sure.
I think he's saying, like, they have, like the upper class elite who will always be elite, and then you've got the workers and the peasants, that sort of thing. I think that's what he's trying to say. Ian says dirty smear merchants. He actually saw that come in as we was talking about Butlins.
I love that. I love that saying, and I know where it's from as well. Dirty smear merchants. I know exactly. It's it was something that my dear old friend Sargon of Akkad said it when he was running
Yes.
when he was running for when he was taking the piss and running for um, when he was trying to run to get elected as a member of European Parliament, he had he had to do an interview with he had to do like a press conference with like the Sky News and the BBC, and he spent about 5 minutes basically just someone ripping into them and calling them dirty, dirty smear merchants.
Brilliant. It's a bit like the
Which,
libertarian guy in Argentina.
at the time I could not stop fucking laughing because it was the first time I'd actually seen someone turn around and actually call the mainstream media in the UK what they are, because that's all they are. That's all they've got on people. It's just
like
oh, you said this once, you said that once. Yeah, when are we actually going to talk about policy? I don't give a shit what they said once that upset you. I want to know what they want to do.
Yeah, because you're trying to ruin their chances of getting elected. Sorry, the Democrats and Donald Trump. Sorry, no,
these people are trying to get elected. I don't care if they said something that made you upset. I want to know what they actually stand for. Yeah. I want to know what their policies are.
It's like I try to watch our debates are getting just as bad, but no offense to the Americans in chat. I try to watch the American debates just so, because obviously the Americans are the leaders of the free world, so I need to know what's going on.
The American debates make me want to shoot myself.
And I'm just sitting there and they're like, so what is your view on this race? And I'm like, cool. What's his view on the economy? What's his view on like military spending? That's the things you need to worry about. You know the last group of people who spoke like this, the Roman Republic, before Julius Caesar came in and took the whole thing out.
I've got an idea. You know what we should do for a laugh one day? We should just do a live stream where we watch one of these debates.
Yeah,
like the nominations, because I know for a fact that if we watch the Republican debate, that would be hilarious when they start talking about God. Because I specifically remember watching the 2015 Republican race, and towards the end, I am not shitting you. This happened, and at the final question that they had, where it was like, we're gonna take a break. We're gonna have our candidates take closing statements, and God. Sorry. I'm not joking you.
I have complete respect for Christians and Jewish people and all that.
Like, that's fair enough, but it's like that would never happen in the UK. It's like if you're having you're having like a leaders debate to who's going to run this major party of the country, and the last subject they're going to talk about is any word from God.
There's also that thing, like I remember even I was doing it where like everyone was sitting there going everyone was retweeting and going like how hilarious it was when Trump did when Hillary Clinton brought up, I can't remember, it was like, oh, the world would be so bad if he was president, and then someone turned around to Clinton and went, yeah, you'd be in jail, and everyone's like, oh, amazing, but it's not a policy discussion. It's brilliant for us. It's brilliant for us as Brits, because we get to sit there and laugh at it, but for Americans, I feel so
never did it though. I really wanted him to do it. I really wanted him to put that vile thing in prison,
because they're best friends in real life.
For what she did to Syria and Libya.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, guys. Hang on. Sorry, I'm just getting an important email come through. Oh, it's fine. I won't bother with that. I've just had an important email come through, guys. There's absolutely no reference to that whatsoever.
Our records indicate that you've been in an accident that wasn't your fault.
I was referring to the British Museum with the Muses. Oh, okay. Oh, yes, because they're all in the collection. Fair enough. That makes sense. Also, Count looks like Lucifer from the TV show Lucifer. That is a big compliment.
I'll take that, because he's what, I forgot the actor's name, but he is quite the dish.
Yeah,
so I'll take
that. You're gonna go through the chat after this has ended, screenshot that, and have that as your YouTube banner. I'm waiting for.
Well, no, I'll just use it the next time someone tries to label me as some kind of cult leader or something, or someone that's just someone who thinks they're better than they are, and I'll just list a bunch of comments where people have said this and that about me, and it's like, sounds like someone's a bit.
If you go into a Count Daedalus video on TikTok, they're not as much as they used to be, but if you look at the older videos especially, there is a horde of Count Daedalus simps that you will find. Count denies that they exist, but they do exist. They're in less numbers now. I think it's because you've got a missus now. You've got a girlfriend, so they're like.
No, I was still getting a lot of those comments even when we'd first got together and I announced it.
I don't know where they've gone then. Maybe
I
they'll. May.
To be fair, I don't post as much as I did. That's
Yeah,
probably why.
well, right, okay.
But
I am coming up to my hard stop, so I've got to finish soon. Sorry, go on.
Occasionally, when I do get a video that goes somewhat viral, I do spot them, and it's like, oh, interesting. Bit of a confidence.
Yeah, the eye emojis. Then Ian said Carl of Swindon. Did you actually very quickly before we disappear tangent? Did you see the BBC misinformation thing with the program where they're trying to prove misinformation?
Yes, I did.
And then Carl Benjamin, Sargon of Akkad, proved how the misinformation show was spreading misinformation about.
Well, they were spreading misinformation. It was fucking hilarious. It's like he went to Totnes twice. No, he didn't. He went once. What you on about?
And the best part about that whole thing was rather than arguing back with him about how they were doing misinformation, they just blocked him.
Yeah, of course. I've met Sargon of Akkad as well. I met him in 2018. He's actually not that bad of a guy.
Yeah,
he's just a family man.
If anyone ever argues Sargon of Akkad's a bad person, and I know I'm not. This isn't me talking about his politics. I don't agree with everything he says. To me, he's a bit too conservative. But
yeah,
him and Lacey Green hated each other. Lacey Green, for you don't know, was a very hardcore feminist back in the day. They hated each other and they said some horrific things on Twitter to each other. And then they met up in person and had this really heartfelt apology. And I was like, that is how people should act. Like these two people who disagree on everything.
There was a picture on the Twitters where they literally just gave each other a hug.
Yeah, and they was like,
It was really wholesome.
Yeah. Like Sargon, a man who always goes on about manliness, was like sobbing, like because he realised how much of a dick he'd been.
He was turned into a little teddy bear.
I will have to track down the marshmallows. The plant is from an OG recipe. Fair play. I've given up on my government. Both of them very fair play. Politics is becoming reality TV at this point, especially in the UK. I got in trouble for saying this the other day when I was like, "Oh, Labour and Conservative are the same thing." Apparently,
they are the same thing.
I got told I was uneducated on TikTok when I responded to a comment about that. I got told I was uneducated.
To which I say, sit down, shut the fuck up, and get out of your ideological fucking.
I responded with this comment is ironic, basically implying that he was the uneducated one and he didn't understand what ironic meant. And I was wetting myself laughing because he was like, actually, you need to Google the definition of ironic because that's not what ironic means. And I was like, you've completely misunderstood. Which is funny that you don't understand what ironic means because you've proven my point. The debates are just yelling at each other on things that don't matter. They aren't debates, they're just yelling contests. Very true. Right, I'm going to finish up now, guys, because I've got a hard stop tonight, unfortunately. Can I join on the stream for the debate? Sure, yeah. No, when that happens, I'm going to try and I've got an idea for a stream, which nearly came to fruition a few months ago. I want to do a big debate of all the religions come in, but now my channel's bigger and I'm pulling people into streams. I'm probably going to do it on this channel, and I have Count's looking surprised because I haven't told Count about this because Count doesn't Count isn't aware that I was going to invite him, but it's a few months away. I'm going to have different. Obviously, Count is a lot more on the atheist edge than I am, and we're both agnostic, but I'm more on the maybe there is a higher power side. So it'll be an interesting debate. My main question is religion compatible with aliens and dinosaurs? I'm not going to lie because I'm a child.
No, it's not.
It depends on the only Abrahamic faith that directly says no to aliens is Islam. It actually would fit into Judaism and Christianity. And I have that on the word of a certain YouTuber who I'm not going to say because I don't know if he's spoken about it publicly. We finish off, and then Punk Bear says laugh my ass off at the end. So thank you to everyone for watching. Before we go, Count, would you like to give your closing statements on Pol Pot and everything else we've discussed? And obviously, where can people find you?
To conclude, Pol Pot was a massive bastard, even by communist standards.
Yep.
Don't do communism, kids.
Don't do communism. You need to on your merch. Put on your merch store on the t-shirt.
Do not do ideological nonsense because you will end up killing millions of people and you will get removed by ideological idiots who think you've gone too far.
Yeah, or having a library of your own books.
Or having libraries of your or forcing the populace to read libraries of your own books like Kim Il Sung did.
Yeah, you can learn
which
about
means
that.
we should keep Which means we should keep a close eye on that old J.K. Rowling. We really need to keep a close eye on that one.
You can. Oh, I'm not. There's a joke that's come into my head that I'm not touching publicly about J.K. Rowling. There's no way to.
Otherwise, my name is Count Daedalus, or as some people like to call me, Count Dooku from Wish. You can find me on TikTok under Count Daedalus. Same with Instagram. I have a merch store that you can get English stuff from, which is basically a representation of English liberalism.
For those who don't know, can you quickly go over the stars before we disappear?
Under countdaedalus.co.uk, it represents it has the 7 stars of what I call a liberal society: free speech, democracy, individual rights, blind justice, economic freedom, self-reliance, and secularism.
And the link
Otherwise, that's me.
The link to Count's shop is in the description below.
Yes.
If you want to have a look.
And my TikTok.
Yeah. Those especially, because TikTok is finally paying us, but barely anything unless we get over 1 million views. Yeah, so I guess but that's pretty much covered where people can find you, to be fair, Instagram and TikTok. But yeah, anything else you wanted to add, or are we all groovy? Well, guys, thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Yeah, I'll do my little sign off. So, hope you all enjoyed. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye. Hang on, where's the end stream button? There it is. And end. See you later, guys. Woo! That is that.